My name is Thomas Mesereau. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I was Michael Jackson's lead criminal defense counsel in his criminal trial in the year 2005. Michael was a champion of children. Michael felt that he was uniquely suited to make a difference on the planet by becoming a champion of children. Children of all races, all religions, children from all localities. He felt that he could speak up for children in a way that no one else could because he was so gifted with his creative abilities, he was so gifted with his success, financial and otherwise. He felt that if he became a champion of the world's children, he could make a tremendous and permanent difference on the planet. So when Gavin Arvizo appeared in that documentary with him, the documentary appeared. There was a lot of scandalous reporting about the documentary. As a result of it, the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department began an investigation into Michael Jackson's behavior. They began to focus on the Arvizo family, who had had a falling out with Michael Jackson, and they convinced themselves that not only had the boy been molested, but that the family had been held against their will at Neverland and forced to make a statement favorable to Michael Jackson. The convoluted theory of motive was that because Michael Jackson had some financial difficulties, which he sometimes had, sometimes he was short on cash, he was always big on assets. I mean, Michael Jackson probably when he died may have been worth a couple of $1 billion in assets. But sometimes he was cash poor because he was employing so many people at Neverland. He had a zoo of animals. He had a very expensive lifestyle. And the theory was that he was short on cash and that this documentary was going to ruin his ability to make money in the future, which was absurd, and that because he was so desperate that he forced the Arvizo family to make positive statements about him. They were saying that Michael Jackson took a child who was seriously ill from cancer, who had had a lot of his internal organs removed, who could easily die. They were saying Michael Jackson took this diseased, cancer-stricken, sick, possibly dying child, plied him with alcohol to prepare him for the crime of child molestation. They were also saying that he took a family, that he falsely imprisoned them, that he arranged a criminal conspiracy with others to abduct children, commit criminal extortion, and false imprisonment. These are horrific, serious charges. And the more time I spent with him, the more I became absolutely convinced this man could never have committed these crimes. Well, actually, originally he was indicted for 10 felony counts. The last 4 felony counts were charges that he had deliberately given alcohol to an underage child for purposes of molestation. The judge added 4 lesser included charges to those 4 counts, meaning if the jury acquitted Michael on any of those last 4 counts, they then had the option of convicting him on what is called a lesser included count, which was a misdemeanor charging that he gave alcohol to an underage child. They then had to, once they acquitted him on those last 4, they had to take up the lesser includeds, and they acquitted him on those too. So it was 14 not guilty verdicts. This is one of the most disgraceful chapters in the history of the worldwide media. Every sinister effort was made to see Michael Jackson convicted. Every dishonest, poisonous way to try and influence the jury and get a conviction was done by the media. It was a feeding frenzy, it was malicious, it was evil, it was disturbing, and fortunately, they failed in their effort to see an innocent person convicted. They failed, and they failed miserably, and I was very proud to be part of their failure. I learned very quickly not to trust the media in this case. There were a few exceptions. There were a couple of older journalists who were very professional and ethical, but I learned that in general this was a feeding frenzy that I'd never seen before. This was a nonstop 24-hour effort to sully and destroy Michael Jackson's reputation, and they hoped to influence the jury in their deliberations. The media wanted a conviction. I was told after the trial that I had cost the worldwide media billions of dollars by acquitting Michael Jackson on every single charge. Well, I had many talks with Michael at 3, 4 in the morning. He also would call my co-counsel, Susan Yu. And we'd have talks about the case, about his family, whatever he wanted to talk about. And he was very, very scared. He was particularly scared for his children. And, you know, Michael Jackson was a delicate, kind, sensitive, intuitive, creative genius. He wasn't built to sit in a courtroom in a criminal trial and fend off ugly, horrible charges like this. The trial took its toll. You could see him deteriorating physically and emotionally. He was doing his best. I think his mother and God were the primary ones who kept him strong. And he was scared. He was worried. He was fragile. It was just the worst place for him to be and the most unjust place for him to be. I told him what his mother told him. God was with him. The truth would come out, and that it was coming out bit by bit, day by day. I felt that we were destroying their case, destroying their witnesses, showing what the truth really was. But even still, you never know what a jury of strangers will do. And that type of stress and that kind of pressure was eating away at Michael Jackson. He grew thinner. He grew more and more tired around his eyes. He had trouble sleeping. Well, Mrs. Jackson is one of the loveliest, kindest, most wonderful people you'll ever meet. She's spiritual, she's gentle, she's powerful, and she had a great influence on Michael Jackson throughout this trial. I would watch the two of them interact during the breaks, where we would be in a private room upstairs in the courthouse. And she always told Michael, Michael, the truth is coming out, God is with you, you will come through this. And I could look in his eyes and see what a difference it made. She's a wonderful, caring, kind, loving, spiritual human being.
The judge has now handed the verdict forms to the clerk, and we're starting to
Let's take a listen, everybody.
That's a day I'll never forget. The jury had been deliberating for a week, and I woke up that morning with a strong feeling something was going to happen. And you never know, is a jury going to reach verdicts on all counts, no counts? Are they going to reach verdicts on some counts and maybe hang on other counts? When I heard they had reached verdicts on all counts, I knew in my heart of hearts he was going to be acquitted. Because I didn't know these jurors, but I looked at them for 5 months. And I knew that some of these jurors were disgusted at this case. I knew that some of these jurors just were laughing inside at some of these witnesses. And I never thought they would get 12 jurors to convict. So when I heard they had reached unanimous verdicts on every count, I truly believed that he was going to walk home free and exonerated, and he did.
White doves being released. Tell us what else is going on.
Well, an absolute rush, a roar from the crowd with every not guilty count. It was read 14 times, those words, not guilty, for Michael Jackson, and the crowd went crazy. Susan Yu, who is Tom Mesereau's right-hand woman, I'm told, was crying as these verdicts were read. Tom Mesereau emotionless. I have not been given word yet on what Michael Jackson's reaction to this clean sweep from the jury was.
Michael Jackson was acquitted on all 14 charges, the 10 original felony counts that the grand jury indicted him on, and 4 lesser included misdemeanor counts that the trial judge allowed the jury to consider. So it was 14 not guilty verdicts in all. On the day of the verdict, Michael Jackson looked worse than I had ever seen him look during the trial. His cheeks were sunken in. He looked like he hadn't slept. He looked terrible. And he came into the courtroom just looking exhausted, famished, scared. It's the worst I'd ever seen him look. After the last not guilty, I just looked at him and said, Michael, we won. You're free. And he hugged me and said, thank you, thank you, thank you. He knew what was going on. He just looked absolutely petrified with fear and exhaustion. I lived in Santa Maria for 6 months. And my life was totally consumed with Michael Jackson's criminal trial. And I got a good feel for the prosecution and the sheriffs and their staff. And when the last not guilty came down, 14 in all, I had a feeling that these people were wounded beyond belief. Because when I got into the case, it was very obvious that they thought they couldn't lose. They had the whole worldwide media telling them they couldn't lose. So they thought they were going to convict the biggest celebrity on the planet, and they were going to be immortalized in the process. They thought it would bring them riches and fame that they never dreamed about having before. And when they were defeated, I had a bad feeling that they would be out to get Michael Jackson to try and somehow salvage their self-respect and their reputations. because they were badly damaged by this loss. I felt that Michael would never be able to live in peace in Neverland again. The place had been raided, defiled. They had torn his rooms up and down. They had destroyed furniture. They had done all sorts of things in their search for ways to convict him. And I felt he'd never live in peace. I felt they would always be looking over his shoulder, trying to find a way to pin another case on him. And I did tell him that I felt that everything in life has a time and a place, including Neverland. And I felt that that chapter had ended, and he had to move on. He was so selfless. A few months before the trial started, I learned that my only sibling, my younger sister, had terminal cancer of the brain and lung. And she first had a brain tumor removed. It looked like it had been successful. We were praying that it would be successful. She went home, and she arrived at her home in Southern California, and there was a bouquet of beautiful flowers that was bigger than her door, and with a little envelope. And she had no idea where this had come from. And in the envelope was a poem to her from Michael Jackson. And she called me up just ecstatic. She just couldn't believe that he would be so thoughtful. First of all, he'd never met her. And second of all, he was in the middle of the biggest crisis of his lifetime. And she just was so touched that he would take the time to do that. The other thing was, late in the trial, I began to wake up in the morning and suffer from vertigo. I would jump out of bed at 3 in the morning when my alarm went off, and my head was spinning, and I would fall back on my bed. And I was horrified because my sister had died of a brain tumor. Johnny Cochran had died in the middle of the trial from a brain tumor. And suddenly I'm just spinning every morning as I try to get my bearings. And I went to a local doctor, and he determined that I was suffering from a local spore in the fields that causes this, and he gave me some medication that helped me. But when Michael Jackson heard about this, he was calling me nonstop to see how I was. Not worried about himself, worried about me. He just was a kind, selfless, decent, caring person. And I'll never forget those two instances.
Do you think he was misunderstood?
He was very much misunderstood. Because one, he was such a target for profiteers because of his wealth and fame. And people like to see what they want to see. People are selfish. They'll look at you in any way they choose to justify why your money should be in their pocket. And Michael Jackson was no exception. So instead of seeing this kind, childlike genius, instead of valuing him for all that he tried to accomplish with his wealth and genius, to heal the world, to change the planet, to change our values, and to treat everybody with respect and dignity, they chose to look at him as a freak, as a strange human being. And it was all designed to justify why they should take advantage of him. It was very, very shameful. I think he was a complex man, but a very, very good person. Very kind, very naive, very gentle, very idealistic, very intuitive, very creative, very well-meaning. I think he liked to see the good in people. I think he thought all people deserve love and respect. I think he was someone who could bring all races together, all religions together, all continents together. He knew he had this ability, and he wanted to use that ability to change the world and create good. He could have been just a selfish, greedy narcissist. He could have simply taken his wealth and had a lot of parties and engaged in a lot of decadence and just thought of himself. But that was not what Michael Jackson wanted to do with himself. It's not what he wanted to do with his life. He felt he could heal the world in a very, very positive, generous, creative, kind way. The world should remember Michael Jackson as he truly was. He was a unique combination of genius, talent, kindness, and decency. Never have we ever seen someone with this level of talent. Talent in the arts, in music, in choreography, in dance. And at the same time, never have we seen this deep level of kindness and decency and charity. Never have we seen someone with those qualities combined with a vision to heal the world, focus on its children, stop violence, and preserve dignity everywhere. We've never seen this type of combination ever. He felt he could heal the world in a very, very positive, generous, creative, kind way. He knew his gifts were creative. He knew that music and art and dance and choreography were his magical gifts from God, and he thought he could use them to bring more love and kindness and decency and respect into the world, and I think he really succeeded. Oh, I think as each year goes by, there's more of a focus on the positive aspects of Michael's life and not some of these, false charges. I think people are paying more and more attention to his music, to his choreography, to his dance, to his humanity, to what he tried to do around the world to deal with starving children, to help children with AIDS, to help the elderly, to prepare Neverland as a place where disabled people could come in their wheelchairs and have a wonderful day. I think the goodness in Michael Jackson and the kindness and decency is getting more and more attention, and I think these false, self-serving allegations that haunted him in his lifetime are fading away.